Hey there, it's Rob, the Ignorant Entrepreneur, and I got to give flowers to these 23-year-old Texans who made $4 million last year mining Bitcoin off flare gas from oil drilling. The two bromigos' names are Brent, Whitehead, and Matt Lohstroh. These were just some sophomores at Texas A&M University, and they decided to get into the business of mining Bitcoin on the oil fields of eastern Texas. The year was 2019, and at the time, the idea of oil and gas companies joining forces with Bitcoin miners was completely unheard of. But Whitehead, an engineer hailing from a family with a long history in oil and gas production, and Lohstroh, a finance major with a Bitcoin obsession, ignored the skeptics and sunk all the cash they had from their high school side gigs, stemming from lawn care, landscaping, into Giga Energy Solutions, a company that mints Bitcoin from stranded natural gas. For years, oil and gas companies have struggled with the problem of what to do when they accidentally hit natural gas formation while drilling for oil. Whereas oil can easily be trucked out on a remote destination, gas delivery requires a pipeline. If a drilling site is right next to the door to a pipeline, they chuck the gas in and take whatever cash the buyer on the other end is willing to pay that day. But if it's 20 miles from a pipeline, drillers often burn it off or flare it. That is why you will typically see flames rising from oil fields. Beyond the environmental applications of flare gas, drillers are also, in effect, burning cash. So back to these 23-year-old Texans, it was a huge problem with an obvious solution. Giga places a shipping container full of thousands of Bitcoin miners on an oil well, then diverts the natural gas into generators which convert the gas into electricity that is then used to power the miners. The process reduces CO2 equivalent emissions by 63% compared to the continued flaring. And this is actually according to research from a Denver-based Crusoe Energy Systems. Now, Whitehead, and I actually quote, he said, "Growing up, I always saw flares just being in the oil and gas industry. I know how wasteful it was. It's a new way to not only lower emissions, but to monetize gas." Whitehead told CNBC that they signed deals with more than 20 oil and gas companies, 4 of which are publicly traded. Giga also says they're in talks with sovereign wealth funds and they are expanding fast. Giga's 11-person team is adding another 6 employees this month. Lohstroh and Whitehead are part of a growing movement of people placing big bets on the potential for Bitcoin mining to transform the economics of the energy industry. Bratcher, president of the Texas Blockchain Council, said, "They are making their clients revenue through stranded energy Bitcoin mining and solving the environmental challenge with flared gas at the same time." Here you can actually see a Giga shop in Beaumont, Texas. Now, for those of you that are not too familiar with Bitcoin mining, you can think of it as both a security layer for the network and as the method by which new Bitcoin are entered into circulation. A Bitcoin mining rig runs a program on a computer to try to solve a puzzle before anybody else does. Solving that puzzle is what completes a block, a process that both creates new Bitcoin and updates the digital ledger, keeping track of all Bitcoin transactions. Now, when we look at the oil and gas business, which often features sites in remote parts of Texas, far from major population centers, more often than not, if a gas well isn't already stationed near a pipeline, it won't be big enough to warrant the time and expense of building an entirely new line. And if a driller can't immediately find a way to sell the stash of natural gas, most dispose of it on site. One method is to vent it, which releases methane directly into the air, a poor choice for the environment, as its greenhouse effects are shown to be much stronger than carbon dioxide. A more environmentally friendly option is to flare it, which means actually lighting the gas on fire. But flares are only 75 to 90% efficient. As a matter of fact, Adam Ortolf, who heads up business development in the US for Upstream Data, Upstream Data being a Canadian company that manufactures and supplies portable mining solutions for oil and gas facilities, he says, "Even with the flare, some of the methane is being vented without being combusted. This is when on-site Bitcoin mining can prove to be especially impactful." Okay, so check this. When the methane is run into an engine or generator, 100% of the methane is combusted and none of it leaks or vents into the air. But, and Ortolf says, nobody will run through a generator unless they can make money because generators cost money to acquire and maintain. So unless it's economically sustainable, producers won't internally combust the gas. So Bitcoin makes it economically sustainable for oil and gas companies to combust their methane, rather than externally combust it with a flare, rendering stranded gas a thing of the past. But Ortolf has taken years to convince people that parking a trailer full of ASICs on an oil and gas field is a smart and financially sound idea. He even said in 2018 he got laughed out of the room when he talked about mining Bitcoin on flared gas. Now, as we fast forward 4 years into the future today, the business business at Upstream is booming. It now works with 140 Bitcoin mines across Northern America. These companies are now no longer limited by geography to sell energy. Meanwhile, Bitcoin miners get what they want most, cheap electricity. Because oil and gas is very distributed and reliable power source, with a distributed sales point and reliable power draw like a Bitcoin mine, these two could be considered a good fit. Now, it's just amazing to think how these two students saw the trend and were even able to make their first investment into the Upstream equipment, right? But perhaps even more amazing was the work ethic in 2020 to make this all happen. They too talked about their struggles being taken seriously, monetizing stranded gas. Because, again, they were early in the space, so a lot of people didn't know about it. You had your people that thought it was cool, but wouldn't work, yada, yada. Then they said COVID hit, and Giga continued to run 35 miners at its launch site, but business development was understandably halted. Not to mention that Bitcoin was in a bear market. They're running around in meetings trying to get interest in Bitcoin mining, and there's just no interest at all. I just find it so amazing. They got creative and tracked down smaller customers in the North and East Texas that were either breaking the rules or couldn't get permits and were just wasting the gas. And these smaller companies were often the ones that neglected regulatory compliance. This is from Whitehead. I guess he actually did this. We were able to come in and say, hey, you're flaring and you shouldn't be. You're doing stuff that's illegal and you have the opportunity here because you have a shut-in well. We can take all this gas. So I don't know if that was kind of blackmailish. Well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But of course, the real opportunity came for them when Bitcoin saw that recovery past 20,000. And that's when some of the bigger players in the oil and gas industry started to take note, and leaders from publicly traded companies began to approach them about getting into business. Giga even had companies flying from abroad to figure out how the process worked, including companies from Saudi Arabia. Big league. Giga actually told CNBC that their revenue was more than $4 million in 2021, and it's on track to earn more than $20 million by the end of 2022. So I'm even sure that this could possibly help local economies with how they are bringing such value to these otherwise remote sites. And it's just incredible how they saw this trend. It's still early in the space, so I'm sure they'll face competitors, people that are also interested or have connections in the space. And yeah, it's just another innovative means that somebody has found to use crypto. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been The Ignorant Entrepreneur. And hey, this was actually one of my favorite videos to make. I really enjoyed this story. I hope you did too. Again, this has been The Ignorant Entrepreneur. I'm out.